Hello there, and welcome to Scaling Diverse Technical Teams Roundtable discussion hosted by Mustard Jobs. My name's Emily Bussey, and I'm the Head of Technology and Development. And I just wanted to quickly introduce some of our guest speakers today. So first we have Shannon Vetz.
Hi there, everybody. Hope I'm unmuted. Great to be here today. Thank you again, Emily, for inviting me to this panel. I'm very passionate about this topic and super excited to meet with you all. I would love to share really quickly my big passion, which is product and engineering leadership. And I've been doing consulting and working in that field for almost 20 years. And I do quite a lot of mentoring and coaching in that space. You can find me on LinkedIn. I regularly share content there, and excited to bring this topic into a real focus point for today.
Fabulous. And next we have Kwamena.
Hi, how you doing, everybody? My name is Kwamena. I am a chartered architect, and I'm also a DE&I advisor. I do mentoring. I mentor people from the ages of 11 up to about 30. And I am very passionate about retaining the right people for the right jobs, regardless of background, and making sure they're able to thrive in this world we live in.
Fabulous, thank you. And then we have Ashley.
Ashley here. So I am an assistant talent partner over at Housing 21, a diverse background, and my passion obviously being I&D. I'm really excited to bring this journey forward with a lot more people.
Fabulous, thank you. And then Tarek, could you introduce yourself, please?
Hi guys, thanks Emily for inviting us on. I'm Tarek, I'm the project manager at OneTech, and we help underserved founders throughout London either start or grow their businesses. So working with diverse founders is something I have a lot of experience with.
Fabulous. And last but by no means least, Helene.
Hi everyone. So I'm Hélène Lucien. I was Chief Product Officer at 15 Tech during 2 years. And at 15 Tech, our mission is to build more inclusive tech ecosystem by empowering women in tech and supporting diverse talent. I'm passionate about project. I usually oversee the development and implementation of projects and services, ensuring they align with core value of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And today I'm very excited to share insight and strategy with you all.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much all for joining us today, and everyone's bringing like a really interesting kind of different insights from their backgrounds and experiences. The reason why we're kind of hosting this conversation is because there is a serious lack of diversity in kind of technical and STEM positions. It's been getting better progressively over the years, but not quick enough. And typically, kind of corporations can mobilize quicker than governments. And I think if you ever wanted to see substantial systemic change, that's where it has to come from. So 29% of UK tech employees are women or non-binary, with that number falling to 20% for software engineers. Only 3% disclose that they're neurodivergent, or the UK estimates for neurodivergency is actually 15 to 20%. 6% of tech employees are disabled compared to the 23% of the wider working population. And 21% of senior tech roles holders are women, and only 14% ethnic minorities. Sorry, just moving the slide. And so defining diversity and inclusion in technical teams. So Black women represent 0.7% of the IT workforce. In a previous report created in partnership with the Coding Black Females group cited that barriers such as lack of flexible working, career development support and microaggressions, and a strong tech bro culture in some organizations. So kind of opening the question up to the panel, what are the classic pitfalls that you've experienced or seen commonly occurring in your industry? Does anyone want to kind of kick that off?
Hi there. So happy to break the ice on this one. So like you said, there's a real lack of diversity, especially when it comes to leadership roles. And that's the role that I'm looking for and working in right now, is working with those folks and for those folks. One really big pitfall that I'm quite frustrated with is the lack of openness of the networking opportunities, because as you move up the food chain, there are fewer and fewer positions available. And I find that the groups are more and more closed off and increasingly not diverse. So one big complaint that I have, and something that I'm trying to change in my work with women in product, is opening up the community of leaders and not saying you have to have a specific title or you have to have had a specific thing currently in your job description in order to break into this leadership group, where, by the way, all the opportunities and all the referrals come from in those spaces. We don't hire people that we don't know anymore.
I actually really agree with that as a recruiter as well, because there's been times where they ask for people to have a specific job title, and even if someone's personally taken on those responsibilities in that role, but their title is still senior rather than manager, they haven't been able to actually kind of progress up into that opportunity. So I completely understand what you're saying.
If I might just add one more thing, in that space, one other thing that we can do is to hire for potential and not just the previous job titles that we've already had. I think that in the hiring space, that is a really big problem.
Well, I totally agree with Shannon, and I think we need to find a role model. We need to also make sure that any recruiter, any hiring managers are aware of their bias and just try to just to reduce their bias. And also, we usually ask for women to make effort just to fit in the organization, in the way everything is working, and never we asking organization to fix the system and the problem. So it's just one way, and I think really we need organization to take their part.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Helen, I completely agree. You've actually made the half the point I was going to make as well, because how many times do we talk about office culture and outside of work culture of going to the pub? I think what I found throughout my career is people need to be comfortable being uncomfortable, and I don't mean that in a pointed way. I mean, I kind of do actually, because you think birds of a feather do flock together, and I've been in so many situations where I've been in the final two, and then I can see the person next to me who does get the job eventually fits a mold that I don't quite fit. And I think, and I mean, for what I do, I design buildings, I design beautiful buildings, and I work with analogies. So I'm going to use an analogy. It's like, think of it like a lot of companies, a lot of people tote out, a black square during George Floyd, or one month a year they pick the one person with an ethnic background in the office to be the face of something. And I think these are all good starting points, but then I find them quite hollow, because if you think of it this way, there's no need to change for a lot of people. Whereas I don't have the choice to not be black. I leave the house and I'm black, and I'm happy to be black, and I'm proud of my heritage, and my children are proud of their heritage too. Whereas a lot of people, they have the option to avoid dealing with these issues because it makes them uncomfortable. So if you're comfortable with that and actually understand where people come from, because you might have 10 candidates sitting in front of you, talking from a perspective of an employer, and let's say one of them is from a diverse background, you don't understand the hoops I've had to jump through just to be sitting in front of you. So from my own experience, I could have got on the train and been racially profiled. I could have been racially abused on the bus tour. That's happened to me before, and I have to sit in front of a hiring employer and say, and give my best. Sometimes you just want to break down and give up. Or you might have had microaggression upon microaggression just to get to the point you're at, and then you just had enough. So I'm not surprised that black women represent 0.7% of the IT workforce. I mean, it's a similar thing in architecture. When I qualified, I was 0.3% of qualified architects are considered black. I mean, please correct me if I'm wrong, if anyone has a stats, but at the time I qualified, that was roughly what it was. So people in those positions of authority and power need to really understand that you are stronger with a diverse workforce. You are not weakened. Your position is not weakened if somebody has skills that you may not have. If anything, it makes you better if you actually hire those who are smarter than you, because it's a collective. So I think I've waffled on a bit more about that one.
No, absolutely. And I think that diversity of thought is when you challenge an idea. And if an idea isn't challenged and it just kind of flies straight through, because everybody's nodding along with what you're saying, where is the innovation actually happening? Where are people's kind of critical thoughts being engaged? So I completely agree with you that by having a diverse group of employees working together, that actually your product or whatever it is that you're working on is fundamentally going to be better, because it's going to have more barriers to being kind of pushed through and ideas being challenged. So fabulous, thank you. So in terms of what are the barriers to entry within kind of technical or STEM roles, Ashley, what are your thoughts on that?
I think just to go back on Kwamena's point, sorry, is he mentioned something really profound, and that profoundness was, we will have you this month to represent our company, because guess what, you fall into this category. And I feel like it's a very same as Pride Month. We've all seen it when it happens with the rainbow banners and the rainbow logos, and it happens during Pride Month, and then all of a sudden we're an ally. We're huge, and we're absolutely first and front there, supporting everything, all things Pride. And then we get to the 1st of July, and all of that comes back, all of that strips off. And I think it's really poignant that what we're doing is what companies are doing, especially tech companies, I believe, are really, really plugging into their employee resource groups to get that information. Those ERGs are there all year round, and we are not just celebrating one month. And it's the same for all diversities. And I think the challenge that we have there is pick a group that you want to go into, is what companies will say. So if you are a member of the LGBTQ plus community, go into that ERG. If you're a member of the Black community or people of colour community, go into that ERG. So it's once again separating everybody without even realising that they're doing it. And I think it's a big barrier that companies are thinking they've got a handle on, and actually when they break it down, they really don't. So it's either this or either that group, and there's never a case of let's blend them all together and let's see what we can do. So I feel like there's an issue, and there's a barrier.
And I think on that as well is that obviously people's identities are often dual. So like you're saying, if you have to pick between kind of LGBTQ, ethnicity, or gender, like you can be a queer Black woman. So then where do you go? So why are we segmenting it when identity is so, like multifaceted?
Absolutely, I agree, and I think that the more we celebrate people with multi gifts, I guess, and especially queer Black women, the more we celebrate them, the more we empower them, the more we see them in management positions, in leadership positions, or just being given that chance. The more we see that, the more we're going to be able to learn and educate and understand.
Absolutely. And in terms of like, where is the disparity kind of for minority groups? Is there anyone that wants to kind of comment on that as to kind of where we're seeing that most prolifically, whether that's in kind of tech or STEM, or where in their industry they find that most?
I think it's a really interesting one, because if you look at if I talk about architecture, for example, if you look at any practice I come across, my first thing to do is look at the website, look at what they stand for, and look at their team if they have one. And a lot of them are very good. Don't get me wrong. There are a lot of practices who are very on the ball and on the button about hiring diverse talent and hiring the best talent they can, and not necessarily because we don't want token gestures at the same time, because that can make it 10 times worse. And I sort of look at, and there's some companies where you look at their team and you've got the senior leadership all very homogenous. You've got a few women sprinkled in there, and then as you get further and further down, it gets more and more diverse. And I think it's things like that, and it's not. This is not meant to be a poking the finger at people. Maybe it is at the same time. But I hope this pricks people's conscience. You look at people around you, and if you're, as you said, if you are all agreeing the same things, there's a problem. You need to have that iron sharpening iron. And I think when I've been in leadership spaces where I remember having a conversation with with a manager about code switching. And he said, "Why do you need to code switch?" And I sort of laughed and I said, "Oh, I understand why you asked that question, because the commoner you see at work is not the commoner who my kids see, or that my wife sees, or that my football team sees, or that my friends see. And that's not because I'm leading a dual life. It's because growing up, you have to assimilate in certain spaces. The way I speak is very different to the way some of my friends speak, but that doesn't mean I'm any more polished or any more any more qualified for a role. It just means it's the way I speak based on my background. And I think, there's a lot of unconscious bias, and it's not even someone sitting there saying, I don't want to hire someone because of the color of their skin or their background. It's mainly they don't want to hire, or they don't want to even engage because they're scared of getting it wrong. There's a lot of rhetoric. Like I remember somebody was describing me to somebody else in the office, and they used every term apart from Black. They said, "Oh, he's got short hair. Oh, he's got cool trainers." And I said, "You mean me, the Black man?" They went, "Oh, you can't say that." I said, "No, you described me. You didn't actually use a slur. there's a very big difference. And actually, we need to step away from being scared to hit the nail on the head and address the biases and address because again, a lot of companies, a lot of people have been in positions based on their privilege without them realizing, and that's okay. I'm aware I've got privilege as a straight man. I'm aware I've got privilege as a married man in architecture. Being a married man means I'm seen as more attractive than if my wife was in my position, and I'm aware of that, and I'm championing for that not to be the case. And I think we need to do more of that to say, actually, we need to realize our privilege and actually say, hey, yes, I have a privilege of being male in this industry, but I shouldn't get a head up because I'm a man. I should be given a head up because I'm the best person for the role, not because I fit a narrative.
And I think sometimes there's a defensiveness towards it when they're like, oh, no, I didn't have white privilege because I had a really hard life myself. And it's like, hang on a second. It doesn't mean that you've never experienced anything in your life. It means that you can't relate to this direct experience that we're talking about. And like you said about having that kind of confidence to ask the difficult questions, understand what your privilege is in comparison to other people. Like, you're not going to learn unless you actually ask those questions and have that vulnerability of kind of wanting to understand.
Yeah, 100%. Because I think even in design spaces, if for instance I'm designing a women's shelter, I am not the person that is the pro at that because I'm not a woman. So the best thing for me to do as a designer is to engage with those communities and actually listen, not just have a token gesture. And I think I say all that to say we need, as if you're trying to get more diverse talent involved, actually listen to the talent. Don't just pick and choose when it's convenient or when it's cool, or if somebody has a good taste in music, pick into that. No, you actually get to know them as people. You realize we're all dealing with things in different ways, but we're not that scary. We just season our food differently.
Fabulous. And in terms of the kind of next question, so how can we create the right opportunities for tech education for all minority groups? So I think Shannon had popped her hand up for this one.
Yeah, thanks. I'll be brief so that other people can also speak. So I'm sure they have a lot of opinions. But my opinion is we don't invest enough in ground up initiatives. So we should be hiring more junior folks in diverse talent opportunities, and we should be creating training and mentorship programs with their growth trajectory already in mind. One thing that I did in an organization which worked really well for me was hiring junior QA folks. And when we did that, they got a lay of the land. And then we moved them into junior programmer roles. And then they understood some like portion of, the different layers of programming that they need to understand and how to start building it. And then we eventually grew them up into senior and then leadership roles. I think that's the best way to do it. Long-term investments when you have trouble or if you're fighting a battle with the leadership on hiring more senior roles is a great way to grow your own leadership eventually. But you have to have that strategy in mind and you have to have the steps in place. If you can, I'm so passionate about this because I think so many organizations can do it. It's not expensive and it's truly a way to change the landscape of your team. And I think we should be investing more in it. If you can, hire at the top because that's how you will truly change your organization. Get diverse people in at leadership roles and watch it tumble down. It's amazing the shift that can happen so fast.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Shannon. And then in terms of kind of recruitment strategies for diverse talent, so unconscious bias, which we've actually kind of touched on already, refers to any association made between kind of different qualities such as gender, race, and culture without conscious awareness. So when we kind of hire people because we feel like we relate to them or they look like us or they have similar hobbies to us, this automatic stereotyping or judging is a huge barrier to workplace inclusion and diversity. So kind of back to the panel again, but what do you think are the best practices to attract diverse talent?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things that I've noticed coming from a recruitment background where I've interviewed countless people from all diverse backgrounds is we have to have diverse interview panels. We have to have push for diverse interview panels as an absolute standard. That isn't just a case of for X role or Y role. It is for every single role. We have to push for that diverse interview panel. And there is nothing worse than going to an interview, for myself, going to an interview and seeing either two straight white men, or B, two white women, or two black people. There's nothing diverse when the people are interviewing you are exactly the same. There is nothing diverse about that at all. And I think that there's a number of ways to look around this, especially for hiring females. We need to make sure that there is at least a female on that panel. We need to make sure that when you are going into an interview as a female as well, you need to make sure that you are looking at another female who will be able to understand a lot of the things that male can't understand, and that's from a very unconscious bias point of view as well. It's something along the lines of, what if they want to know about the maternity leave structure? The first thing a man's going to think is, she's going to go off and get pregnant.
Yeah, rather than you're thinking about long term as a career there. It's an instant.
Is looking at you and saying, okay, she has a plan. So this is her plan, and this is how she wants to tackle it before she gets here. So I think there's so many ways of looking at that. And, as a gay man, to go into something and go, what are your thoughts on paternity leave for same-sex couples? There's so many questions that you can ask, but if you are not looking at the state that a person that has that understanding, or as that unconscious bias is still there, you're already fighting a battle.
I completely agree. And also, even in my own personal experience, the last 4 jobs I've had, there wasn't a woman that interviewed me. And I think that that's probably a shared experience. So I can see everyone nodding in the videos below. So that's obviously quite a communal experience. It's Tarek, how you doing?
Good. Sorry, you're back. I was just going to join and say the same thing, basically. But I'd also say it's important that the decision makers are also from diverse backgrounds. So likewise, when the people interviewing you are all white or straight or whatever, then obviously that's quite intimidating if you don't come from that background. But then what I've personally experienced with a lot of hiring processes as well is that you might have that at the initial level where you have like a little bit of diversity, but then as you progress and you get towards decision makers, they're maybe typically like white, older, male, etc. And then you hit a barrier, basically. So you can only get so far. You might have been complimented through this whole, job experience, and then you hit the barrier where you actually would get the job, and you still can't pass that. So that's another really key point, I think.
Okay, perfect. And obviously the kind of role that you're in as well is about kind of changing the room for actual kind of founders, so that you're changing that from the actual start and conception of the business, which I think will have a massive impact on the ability to attract diverse talent, like we've commented on before, by having that kind of naturally at the top anyway.
Yeah, for sure. Like we have lots of programs to support founders in their early journeys, and they might go on to found a business, but they could also obviously join tech companies and this kind of thing with their experience. And whilst there might be like like mental limitations that people have put in their place due to all of these barriers that are constantly put in the way, I think it's good that people of color can start their own businesses, and that are given some kind of equity in that regard.
Absolutely. Okay, perfect. And then kind of moving on to the next question. So how can we make job applications and interview processes more inclusive? This is definitely something we've kind of touched on already, but if anyone wants to add a kind of a bit more colour to that. Hey, Shannon.
Hi, everybody. I'll be quick again. I just want to make one quick point. I think when I was able to hire more diverse talent, a key aspect of educating of the hiring panel was not to look at the outward confidence that person puts out there. The reason why is because when I see female and people of color candidates applying for roles, the humility factor tends to be a lot higher for some reason. And it's really easy when you're on that hiring panel to hear two people talk and go, well, this one seems way more sure of themselves and way more confident. And even I myself had to do this. I was making a hire for a manager role, and there was a woman and there was a man, and I liked both candidates, and I heard myself going, he seems really confident, like really like take charge, like he wants to do it. And I had to check myself and go, yeah, but that's normal. Because the woman is going to be more like, I don't want to appear too cocky or too arrogant, because that can be seen as a real negative for women who are confident in those roles. So even just checking yourself during that interview process can be very helpful to increasing the diversity. I ended up hiring the woman. No regrets. She was one of the best hires I ever made, by the way.
Love that. And Cromena.
I love what you just said, because this is a quote that, again, I didn't make this quote up. I heard it from somebody, so please do not use it against me. Somebody once told me you need to have the confidence of a mediocre white man, and they said it in a way not to say that a white man is not good enough, but it's somebody who isn't the best, isn't the worst, but is very confident that they can do it, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's actually quite good, because as you get further, you realize a lot of your job is the confidence to look at problems and say, okay, I can tackle this. And as people of color and as different backgrounds, we, as Shannon said, we tend to go to humility. And I can tell you exactly where that comes from. My parents emigrated here in the 80s. So I was born and bred British, but I've got dual heritage. They were born in the 80s, and myself and my sister, we have a very open relationship with our parents, and we said to them during a lot of these riots, we say, why didn't you and mum, not talk about dad, you and mum, like, riot, and why didn't you protest, and why didn't you stand up for your rights when you moved to this country? And my dad said, because my dad's got a similar sense of humor to me, he says, if we had moved to this country with our right to remain visas and said we don't like how we're treated, they would have sent us right back home. So the mindset was to just assimilate and be quiet and be very careful. Our generation have learned not to do that. I mean, there are outliers. So the Shamima Begum case is one thing that is a very interesting case, where your citizenship can be stripped. But it's a thing of, we are taught by society, whether implicitly or subversively, to assimilate. So when we get into those interview spaces, we're told to not be verbose. We're told not to, because again, as a West African, we gesticulate with our hands a lot. We are told not to be in your face, because that could make somebody feel intimidated. I mean, I remember sitting on a bus, and thankfully the person was speaking the dialect from Ghana that I understand, and he was very loud on the bus, and he was literally talking about a car he bought. He just bought a Toyota Corolla, and he was so happy about it, and he was bragging to his friend on the phone. The person in front of me was looking over scared, as if he was aggressive, but actually he was just talking in his dialect. How many times do you see a group of young black boys on just playing football, or the bus, they look like they're up to no good. They're actually just joking around. But the instinct is to be scared. The stereotype to be scared, exactly. So I think when you are in those positions it's a position of authority interviewing somebody, it's a privilege. You need to understand where they come from, and actually you need to respect the time and effort they've taken to be sitting in front of you, because for them to even think about going for the job, for them to even think about applying for the job, for them to put the effort in, and for them to get to the space where they're sitting in front of you, for some people that's a massive mountain, and for them to sit there, it should be applauded. And we need to respect them.
Sorry, and I was just going to say, and on that, like statistically, because I know I laughed when you said like having the confidence of a mediocre white man, but statistically, men will apply to a role where they match 60% or less of the criteria of a job role, where women will only apply when they've kind of reached 100%. So sorry, Helene, I think you've been waiting to say something.
Yeah, that's true. Women just check if they can have 100% of the job. The job skills, and this is something we try to work with our clients, so big companies, tech companies, to help them reduce the list of all the requirements and skill they need for a role. Make sure that the job description is really use an inclusive language. This is very key if you want to attract women, if you want to attract underrepresented groups also. And what we did is to provide a sample of a list of action, a list of skills. You turn it into action verb. That is key to help you reduce the bias when you interview some candidates, and to score everyone, to score every previous experience. This is key for recruitment, but also key for annual review. This is another problem for the promoting people and have more different person in leadership positions, as Shannon mentioned earlier. And this is something that is quite difficult for everyone, for managers and for recruiter, but it's really give good results because at the end, the score. And if you have a diverse recruiting team also, because you need to make in front of the candidates some women, some people from other background, ethnicity and social background, and then if you do the average at the end, you hire the best fit for the company.
Absolutely. I've got to move on to the next slide, but thank you, Helen. So, retention and career development. So, this is something that everybody has kind of touched on already. And when we've talked about kind of progression and nurturing the kind of existing talent base that we have. So, Black and minoritized women have experienced additional levels of exclusion, with almost 3 in 4 experiencing racism at work. I think with what's kind of going on across the UK at the moment, that shouldn't surprise anybody. But in terms of bringing those questions back to the panel, so how can businesses implement mentorship and sponsorship programs to support underrepresented employees? Who wants to go?
I'll take this bullet. It goes back to what we said before about having diverse people in leadership positions. Because when I found myself in positions of leadership, I remember very, very vividly. I was working at practice a good few years ago, and I was a student mentor. So I had students in a school of architecture in London, and one of the sessions was inviting them to my office for a review for some of their work. And I remember them coming to the office and them looking like, this is amazing, because they saw a black man in a position of authority commanding a meeting. It was just a room where we were just doing the reviews and coffee was brought in. But they could see like, oh, actually, one of us can fit here. We do belong in this space. And I remember just sitting back and thinking, okay, I need to work 10 times harder to make sure the door is open behind me and not closed, because retention, I mean, it's cheaper to keep somebody than to hire a new person. And a lot of people don't, a lot of companies, I'm surprised how many do not realize this, and how many companies go through a hire and fire cycle where they will have, I mean, again, architecturally speaking, although the last few years have been quite volatile for the industry, where some companies have been able to forecast for 3 years for projects, and they have to go down to 6 months. So it's not as easy as it used to be. But you're hiring people who are reliant on you to pay their bills, pay their rent. To, I mean, our generation to hopefully save up for a mortgage, if possible. And you're hiring them, and then 6 months later you're saying, "Oh, sorry, no work here," and you're letting them go. And funny enough, the ones you're letting go are the lower members of staff who happen to be of diverse backgrounds. But the homogenous group, the managers, tend to stay because they're seen as having an intrinsic value. You'd be surprised, the people you've let go today will come back and be the managers of tomorrow. And if you are letting them, I mean, I've been in circles and rooms where I've sat across the table from somebody who's made me redundant 2 years before, and they're looking at me eye to eye, and they're a bit shaky. I don't hold grudges, so for me, I'm like, it's business. Like it is. I mean, I've got a very good poker face, so maybe it didn't help.
And I think that feeds into like scaling sustainably as well, right? Like you shouldn't be kind of high, like when we're seeing similar, as you said, in architecture to what we've seen in tech in the last 2 years, we've seen mass redundancies. I know that we've seen that in the gaming industry as well. And, this is because we're kind of over hiring on estimates rather than kind of projects that we've got like signed and sealed. So, I think, was it Ashley that was next? Oh, hey, Ashley.
Hello. Just to follow up on a couple of things in regards to this, I think that there is a real box ticking culture here that doesn't always lie with the hiring managers. I feel like it lies with HR. And I feel like HR see this see this as an exercise almost on saying, look, we're practicing what we preach. And what happens there is you will hire somebody, fire somebody, and replace somebody like for like, just to say that this is what's happened. If I've hired a black person and we've let them go, let's rehire a black person just to say that we're not racist, just to say that we're doing what we're supposed to be doing. And unfortunately, what happens there is that one person in that role just seems to it's a revolving door, isn't it, of just constantly just one in, one out, one in, one out. And there's an issue here which I found on a personal note, on a personal level. I found that we always end up being the grey man. And I think Shannon touched on this when she mentioned about the interview process. We are taught to honestly scale all the way back. And I can say that as an openly gay man, I am taught to scale all the way back that vibrant, outgoing personality, because that is exactly what they are expecting from you. And what happens then is you put yourself in the box. You do it yourself. You put yourself in this box of being the funny one, the fun one, the loud one, the outgoing one, the camp one, all of these things that are so stereotypical with being a gay man, that you end up putting yourself in that box. Then what happens is you are not taken seriously in a professional, setting. And then you find yourself always being this middle to lower level person within the group that's overlooked. And then what happens is then the imposter syndrome comes in. The imposter syndrome then comes in where you go, when you are then chosen for something, you're like, is this a test? Is this just for them to say, okay, look, we'll see you fail, we're going to give you this opportunity? So it creates a real unfortunately toxic culture within yourself, and it's not looked upon in a realistic light. What it's done is, from the moment you walk through that door to interview, you have to scale everything back and almost hide things. We're living in 2024, and I have still been a little bit unsure sometimes as to tell somebody that I'm getting. I mean, not that they can't tell, but I've been unsure to tell somebody that I'm not gay. And in 2024, just in case they go, oh, I bet you are so funny. I bet you live a good night out. I bet you, because then it doesn't matter about my qualification. It doesn't matter what my CV says. What it matters is, am I going to bring fun and humour to the office? And am I going to tick the ethnicity box? Am I going to tick the gender box? Am I going to tick the sexuality box? I'm going to tick all these boxes, and I absolutely will. And they love it. They see it coming in and they go tick, 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 tick. However, what's happening then is I'm falling into that one box, that one category, where I will do myself a disservice and a disjustice by just acting how they want me to act. So unfortunately, that part of my personality that is so endearing and that has worked for me on so many levels also becomes my biggest kryptonite as well. So I think that we have.
I love what you said about imposter syndrome as well. I think that there was, again, a lot of nodding heads that I can see at the bottom of the screen. And I think so many people will relate to that. Should there be more pressure on businesses to create a clearer progression path that is accessible to more team members?
Hey, just getting off mute. Yeah, I'll be quick. I think that there should be. I think that it is the job of the hiring manager and HR to create not only a very clear job description, which they do most of the time, but they often miss the next steps. And they're these two things. First of all, you have to have some sort of progression. Where is this role going, and how is the expectations of the skills and means going to change? And the second thing that you have to have is evaluation criteria. And I think this is where 99% of companies fall short. Even if you have a really clear job description, maybe the evaluation criteria that you are using is not fully fleshed out. And so you have a really hard time managing that person. I'm a very strong believer in having those three things: description, evolution path, and evaluation criteria for their journey that they are in right now, as the three key pieces to being able to retain those people successfully, and most importantly, give them the opportunity to grow under your leadership.
Absolutely. Was there anyone else that wanted to kind of hop on in terms of this specific question about career progression?
Yeah, I think also be intentional about it and be aware how it's portrayed to the workforce, because I remember working with somebody years and years ago, which I was quite junior, and he was saying, why should I? He didn't have kids, and he was fine with that. It wasn't a problem. He said, why should I have to jeopardize my holidays because somebody who has children takes theirs in August? It was a situation where only one could take holiday at the same time. And he made a very good point, and that led me to think, okay, as a company, because they were very much pushing, quite rightly so, parents can, I think they went too far. Parents should get priority over holidays. You got to be careful how you manage that one. And I think it's how you portray it to the whole office. I think the best places I've seen have been where they've said everyone wins when everyone has a fair shot. So instead of saying, oh, because you've decided to have children, you get a leg up on somebody who decided not to. That doesn't really, that you may not be saying that explicitly, but by not saying that, you're allowing that narrative to sort of grow or get, much like we're seeing today in the news. By not saying a lot of things, a lot of people are reading between lines that are not even there and making their own assumptions. But if you explicitly say these policies are set out to help every single person, to make it fair for all, and some people may need a leg up more than others, and some people may not, and that's okay. But at the end of the day, our goal is a collective goal rather than 100 individual goals that happen to be put in the same direction.
And I think that really nicely links into the next question as well. Like, how can businesses and individuals be allies? Like you said, one of the best ways is to kind of be vocal. Like, I was very much kind of raised on the notion that the bystander takes the side of the oppressor, in whatever regard. I think I first heard it like an anti-bullying campaign or something like that, and then it just kind of stayed with me, because if you don't vocalize it, then are you really an ally? And I think that that's where it starts in both an individual sense and a business sense. Does anybody have anything that they wanted to kind of add to that about kind of allyship?
Hey, how's it going? So yeah, I think in this case, I think the way to be allies is basically for businesses to actually truly listen to the individuals, which is typically very, very rare. And as someone pointed out earlier, I can't remember who it was, a lot of this stuff might come from HR, from box ticking exercises and this kind of thing. And it never, or very rarely, really actually benefits the employee and the marginalized group, etc. So I think in a kind of utopian world, if this was to be beneficial to individuals and how they can be allies, it would come from the actual individuals from these communities about how they can be better supported and how their lives at work can progress.
Absolutely.
So yeah.
Thank you so much. And then in terms of how businesses can create an inclusive culture, the quote is, diversity is being asked to the party and inclusion is being asked to dance. So how can businesses and individuals address microaggressions and create a safe space for all employees? And does this vary for LGBT, ethnicity and gender?
Yeah, absolutely, it does. It completely varies, unfortunately, because we cannot just put everything under the same blanket, and I'll bring it to hate crimes. Hate crimes are individual hate crimes. There's hate crimes against women, hate crimes against the LGBTQ plus community. They're not all blanketed all the time, so it's not just a blanket approach that we can do. Training is so key in all of this. Education is so key in all of this. If we are not educating and training our employees, our communities, our colleagues, if we are not training and educating each other, all of us, if we're not being, I'm not educated on every single different minority, but if we are putting that in place, and just to jump back slightly onto allyship, I have a real strong opinion, I guess, on allyship. Everyone is an ally until it's time to be an ally. And I think that we see that in so many different, everyone's an ally through the month of June to the LGBTQ plus community. Everyone's an ally to the Black community during February and Black History Month. Everybody is an ally until it comes to being an ally. And I will stand on something just now where, if you really want to be an ally, check on those people when you see these horrible, horrendous things happening in the news. Check on your colleagues and say, how are you feeling? How are you getting on? How does this make you feel? That's allyship. Allyship is not sitting back and saying, oh, this is awful, this is terrible, but at least I've got gay friends, at least I've got Black friends, at least I've got female friends. What it is saying, how are you feeling? Is there anything I can do to support you? Why is this happening? Do you know, and to have those really, really, really uncomfortable conversations sometimes. And as a company and as an employer, I think the biggest thing that we can do is open the floor to these conversations and make sure that we are educating and training.
Absolutely, because exactly like you said, in terms of what we've got kind of going on at the moment, how many people would have been scared to go to work today based on the riots that we've seen up and down the country? That's how you actually show your allyship, is by supporting people coming back into work and seeing how they're doing. I think, Helene, did you say you wanted to add to this?
The thing is, I think we have to stand up for people if you want to be a real ally. If you see microaggression and there is no zero tolerance policy, you have to make sure that you can support someone in front of everyone. And I think organizations need to provide some clear reporting mechanism and ensure employees to feel safe using them. So it means, do it in an anonymous way, and have some supporting group that you can rely on, you can lean on to help with some dealing some bad stuff and toxicity among managers or among all the organization. And also, I think this is very important that there are some training and education among all companies and organizations, and this should be regular. Because all employees need to learn about it, need to understand, and to recognizing and addressing microaggression as well.
Absolutely.
And of course, leading, for example, I think this is the best thing to do.
And also, I think one last bit to sort of add on to that is be aware of the image you're giving off to employees. So if members of your team have highlighted, hey, this is a microaggression by this employee, if you turn around and say to them, okay, we'll handle it, but then nothing happens, and you're telling them that person and what they bring to the table on paper is more important than you are. And if yes, your bottom line is to create a product, but you can't create a product without your employees. So a great way to create a negative environment in your office is to by not doing anything or by slap on the wrist, is to encourage microaggressions and bullies, because you're also telling the person who's done it, whether they realize it or not, that it's okay. Or again, there's no consequences. We're touching on the riots there. I'm reading the news and my heart is full of joy about this, that they're saying those who are involved in these riots will be prosecuted for the full letter of the law. And I think there is no consequence doesn't have an action. So if you're saying to somebody, okay, they bullied, or they create a microaggression, and then it's almost swept under the rug because that person is a great person to bring business in, you're literally telling your employees, you don't mean a thing. This person is more important because they make us more money. That's not exactly what you want moving forward when you're looking to retain staff, or you're looking for them to be team innovative. I had to say team players, to be team players when you're going through difficulties. You need them to be understanding. That'll be the first ship out of there. You need to actually realize that you need to have a zero tolerance on these sort of things. Any microaggression, if it's found to be true, should be dealt with properly.
Thank you so much. We are going to have to skip on to the Q&A session. So if anyone just kind of wants to throw their hands up to take any of these. But Saman said, talking about representation and diversity, how do you get your extensive experience from another company noticed and mattered as an employee for employers to look at for local experience?
I'm popcorned in. Yes. So I think when it comes to getting your experience noticed from local employers, I assume by local they're talking about different geographies. Is that right? I guess the best way to do that would be local networking. So getting a referral from that company in that local environment is a great way to get your foot in the door. So I see this with expats. I'm an expat. So when I see expats moving to Paris, I invite them regularly to join our international women in product drinks so that they can make those connections that will help them get those first steps.
Thank you, Shannon. That's actually really helpful. We'll go to the next question. As a legally blind 3D artist in the games industry, I've had countless encounters with external and internal recruiters who've approached me for roles that I'm absolutely qualified for. And when I mention my disability, it becomes an issue. I have both seen and felt a change in attitudes towards me, even mentioning it. Very recently, I was contacted about a position at a studio. On their website, it states that they are not only inclusive, but an accessible studio. When I mentioned my disabilities, I was informed that the position meant that I would only be required to be on site 2 to 3 days a week. How can a studio both claim to be inclusive and accessible, yet completely contradicts themselves during the hiring process? Removing the work from home model automatically excludes myself and others with disabilities. How can I approach this in the future? And what can I do about the lack of effort put in for reasonable adjustments? Is there anyone that wants to kind of hop on that straight away?
First of all, Mikey, so sorry that you've even had to go through such an awful experience with recruiters and with the whole recruitment product as a whole. Especially when you're so right, when you are dealing with inclusive employers, who the first thing they will say is, we will make a reasonable adjustments. Just let your recruiter know if there's any reasonable adjustments you need. And the moment you are requiring a reasonable adjustment, that's when we see the issues. And unfortunately, it's something that is so common that actually puts people off even I guess applying for roles. My suggestion would be, and if I've come across this in the past, and I haven't come across somebody who's legally blind who's applied for roles, but for other disabilities, what I have come across is, it is down to me. It is not down to Mikey. It is not down to the candidate. It is down to me as the recruiter, me who is trying to get this person into a role, for me to do the work here. I want to be able to say, right, what reasonable adjustments can we make? And if the employer is saying, or the hiring manager is saying, we can't make any reasonable adjustments, then why not? Why are we promoting that we can? Now we have an issue. Now the issue is us. And I guess it's an uphill battle, and it's a battle that hopefully we can start to overcome slowly but surely. But what I will say to anybody, Mikey in particular, is don't see this as a reflection on yourself. Don't see this as something that is a hold up for yourself. I understand that it seems as though it is, but that company, that whoever it is, that isn't right for you, and eventually you'll find that right one, and you will fit in, and you will slot in, and the experience that you hold and the experience and the value that you bring will be so much better and so much better aligned to a company that does hold those values and practices what they preach.
I couldn't agree more. Thank you, Ashley. So we've got a question from Mark saying, totally agree, RE, representation on panels, but organisations also have to be clear and intentional about how they resource this. I know that my wife gets pulled onto every panel for that exact reason, but it has a material impact on her workload. And guess what? They don't reduce her other duties to make up for it. I think there's probably going to be a few people on the panel who can absolutely relate to this experience. Who wants to take it?
I'm laughing as I read that, because I've been in that very same situation. I can understand where it comes from, because it's not thinking further. It's like, okay, what will make us look good in the market? Great, we've got a panel coming up. Great, who can fit? Great, this person, but then also they need to do their job. You need to have a conversation with the person involved and actually be open and upfront. If you are asking them to be part of a panel, be aware, talk to the other people, because I'm pretty sure the person deciding on one panel is not the same person deciding on another. Talk to the people within your organization and say, okay, that person is basically the face of this company for this sort of topic. Are we allowing them to actually do their job properly? Because I've had conversations where I've been put forward for something, or been asked to do something, and I've had to sort of turn it down, because I know in the office I'll be seen as, oh, he's always off on a conference, always off doing this. But then they tend to like it when my face is across social media or LinkedIn or in the press, and they piggyback off that. I'm deliberately being vague because, again, I don't hold grudges. But I'm actually serious. I said that with jest, but I'm serious. It is, you need to actually be aware of what you're asking somebody to do, because I also saw a tweet. So Ben Lindsay's a really great man. If you don't follow him, do follow him. He works for Power of the Fight, and he put a tweet out and it said, "End of Black History Month." It said, "The black people in the office, you're tired, aren't you? It's hard, isn't it?" Basically, that's what he put. Basically saying, Black History Month is when I know I'm going to be asked to be part of a lot of panels or be asked to be the face, or not even asked. It's happened to be in the videos they're putting out, and my face tends to be there, but I don't have a speaking role, so something like that. It does get tiring, and I think you need to just we touched on before. You need to actually touch base with these people and say, are you actually able to do this? Do you feel comfortable doing this?
And it's adding value ultimately. So maybe it wouldn't be so much of a problem if there was a level of remuneration there or consideration for the other workload, perhaps. So we've got one more question and then we're going to go on to resources, but thank you. How do juniors get themselves noticed at the start of the career? What a brilliant question, Molly. Who wants to take that one for us? Shannon?
Hi, I love this question. Thank you, Molly. I do a lot of in the groups that I meet with. This is a common question, and I myself can relate to it from years past. What I recommend to people that I coach, mentor, and also if I could speak to myself, like, over 10 years ago, I'd be like, hey, Shannon, could you do more of this? I would say anticipate more. So Matt, I give a couple of trainings on this on my LinkedIn if you're looking for like the actual how-tos, but knowing your organization and preparing in advance things that you can say that are intelligent is a great way to get yourself noticed. So if you pay attention to what those people care about, and if you inform yourself intelligently about what they're working on and what they want to avoid in terms of risks or what benefits they want to get, and you have something kind of in your back pocket, this is a beautiful way to get ahead with those people who are influential. So map the influencers, know their communication style, and know what they really care about, and prepare something in advance. And then speak up. And know that when you speak up, you will sound not stupid because you've thought about this in advance. So that's my best advice for people who want to get noticed.
Thank you so much, Shannon. We are rapidly going towards the end of the hour, so I just need to kind of wrap up with the kind of resources that we've put together. I know that a few of our panel had mentioned there was a few others that we didn't quite have listed on there that they wanted to go into, but Black Girls Brunch is founded by Cairo Abanji. They do events all across the UK about changing the kind of face of the room and creating these inclusive environments. Guys, was there anything else that we wanted to quickly shout out just as we're running into that last minute of our hour?
Hi, just going to name off a few. Obviously, Women in Product, great, very open, very inclusive, super nice environment. We don't put barriers or limits on people. I highly recommend. There's Black Girls Who Code. There's Women in Tech. There's Women Tech. There's so many. If you just Google, there's Alpha. That's not spelled with an F, it's spelled with a PH. That's a great place as well to build community and look for jobs. So all of those are great environments, and there are many more online that you can find.
Thank you to all of our speakers, and thank you so much for joining us today and getting your questions in there. This video will be available, so if you missed any of it at all, just find the link on the Mustard LinkedIn page. But thanks so much for everyone for your time today. Cheers.